Initialization of the geopolitical kernel for the fiscal year 2026 reveals a total system failure of the legacy Westphalian operating system and the immediate substitution of algorithmic governance protocols driven by fifth-generation warfare dynamics. We are no longer observing a standard deviation in international relations, but a catastrophic stack overflow in the global order, where the kinetic and the digital have fused into a singular theater of operations designated as the Polycrisis terminus. The synchronized collapse of the post-Cold War architecture is not being dictated by diplomats in Geneva, but by autonomous hunter-killer algorithms, high-frequency trading bots, and sovereign-grade malware designed to dismantle the critical infrastructure of nation-states before the first physical shot is fired. As of January 12, 2026, the United States entity is experiencing a distributed denial of service attack on its hegemonic status, originating from a decentralized coalition of adversarial nodes that are weaponizing energy grids, supply chain logic, and nuclear command and control protocols. The Venezuela paradox is the first vector of this new code war, where the physical extraction of President Maduro was merely the kinetic finale of a months-long cyber siege, targeting the SCADA systems of the Orinoco Belt. Before U.S. special operators breached the perimeter, National Security Agency tail access operations had already compromised the biometric security layers of the Miraflores Palace and inserted zero-day exploits into the programmable logic controllers governing the heavy crude upgraders, effectively seizing the digital sovereignty of Venezuelan state assets. The subsequent market reaction, characterized by the collapse of U.S. shale equities, was not a result of human sentiment, but of algorithmic liquidation cascades triggered by AI-driven sentiment analysis bots that parsed the chemistry of global crude flows faster than human analysts could read the headlines. The invisible war here is fought in the microtransactions of the energy markets, where deep learning models predict the specific gravity requirements of Gulf Coast refineries and short-sell domestic shale producers into oblivion. This is the weaponization of financial interdependence, where the reintegration of Venezuelan heavy crude is a Trojan horse designed to bankrupt the U.S. independent energy sector through a supply-side buffer overflow. Simultaneously, the information space surrounding Caracas has been flooded with deepfake synthetic media and bot-driven narrative swarms to manufacturing consent for the intervention while suppressing the reality of the impending shale insolvency. The second vector, the rare earth stranglehold, represents a hardware-level exploit of the U.S. military-industrial complex. China's export controls on gallium, germanium, and antimony are not trade policy, but a supply chain interdiction attack designed to starve the logic gates of Western precision munitions. This is a kinetic preparation disguised as bureaucratic friction. The invisible layer of this conflict involves the systematic insertion of the hardware Trojans and logic bombs into the few remaining third-party supply chains accessible to the West, ensuring that any attempt to bypass the blockade results in the procurement of compromised silicon. The ban on refining technology is a root-level denial of service for the U.S. energy transition, ensuring that Western green tech remains a slave to Eastern processing algorithms. We are witnessing the decoupling of the global technosphere where the splinter net becomes physical reality. Chinese hardware will no longer speak to American software, and the firmware of F-35s will degrade as the supply of thermally stable dysprosium magnets dries up. This is an attrition war fought in the nanometers of semiconductor fabrication, where the absence of a single element halts the production of AESA radars and night vision optics, rendering the U.S. military a hollow force, a high-latency network with no bandwidth. The third vector, Persian nuclear anarchy, introduces the concept of stochastic terrorism to the nuclear threshold. The collapse of the Iranian regime is not a liberation event, but a security breach of the highest order involving the loss of chain of custody over fissile materials. The threat landscape has shifted from state actor deterrence to non-state actor acquisition, where the fragmentation of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps leads to the emergence of nuclear-armed warlords operating outside of international monitoring protocols. U.S. intelligence is currently deploying autonomous surveillance swarms and predictive AI modeling to track the movement of enriched uranium stockpiles in real time, attempting to secure loose nukes before they can be sold on the dark web for Monero or Zcash. The cyber dimension of this crisis involves the frantic attempted remote bricking of centrifuges at Fordo and Natanz via advanced variants of Stuxnet, while simultaneously battling a localized internet blackout imposed by the dying regime to hide its atrocities. The information war in Tehran is being fought via mesh networks and Starlink terminals, smuggling truth out of a digital black hole, while the regime deploys facial recognition AI to target and eliminate dissenters in a dystopian feedback loop of repression. The financial vector here is the rise of crypto-sanction evasion, where failing state actors liquidate national assets into Bitcoin and stablecoins to move wealth across borders, bypassing the SWIFT network entirely. The fourth vector, the Cape of Conflict, signifies the rewriting of global maritime routing tables. The closure of the Red Sea and the militarization of the Cape of Good Hope by the BRICS naval convergence is a denial of area operation that forces Western logistics into a high-latency, high-cost pathway. The Will for Peace 2026 exercises are a cover for the mapping of undersea fiber optic cables and the calibration of hypersonic anti-ship targeting algorithms. The participating Chinese, Russian, and Iranian vessels are not just floating steel. They are mobile data centers capable of jamming GPS signals, spoofing AIS transponders, and launching electronic warfare attacks against commercial shipping. The shift to the Cape route introduces a permanent latency to the global economy, a distance tax that is being calculated and priced in by automated logistics platforms, driving structural inflation. The strategic objective of the adversarial axis is to control the physical layer of the internet and global trade, threatening to cut the undersea cables that carry 99% of intercontinental data traffic. This would result in a digital blackout for the Western financial system, a kinetic kill switch for the global economy. The use of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, by the BRICS nations during these exercises to settle fuel and provision costs is a beta test for a post-dollar maritime trade environment. The convergence of these four vectors, energy hacking, supply chain injection, nuclear containment failure, and maritime routing denial, creates a composite threat environment where the distinction between peace and war has been erased. The U.S. observer must understand that their portfolio, their energy security, and their physical safety are now variables in a global optimization algorithm being run by hostile powers. The peace dividend has been deprecated. We have entered the era of zero-trust geopolitics, where every barrel of oil, every microchip, and every container ship is a packet in a hostile network. The only viable strategy is total system hardening. the onshoring of critical processing logic, the establishing of analog backups for digital systems, and the preparation for a complete decoupling from the Eurasian operating system. The economic warning lights are not malfunctioning. They are signaling a critical system error in the globalization protocol. The future is not just volatile, it is encrypted, autonomous, and aggressively kinetic. The narrative of 2026 is a recursive loop of crisis initiation and algorithmic response, where the speed of conflict exceeds the OODA loop of human decision makers, leaving the West to react to events that have already been decided by the machine logic of its adversaries. The chaotic signals from Caracas, Tehran, and Cape Town are not noise. They are the encrypted headers of a new world order being compiled in real time. End of line.